Welcome, fans, to another edition of the Cheap Heat Productions Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling, and I'm pleased to be sitting down once again with a man who has had a diverse career in pro wrestling all over the world, literally, and also had a tenure that most will probably remember from his WWF days. That would be the one, the only Joe E. Legend. Joe, how are you this evening over there in Germany?
I'm doing okay. I love the name Cheap Heat Podcast. If there's one podcast I should be on, it's one entitled Cheap Heat. It's tremendous.
That's as we'll get into that. That definitely would seem to have some overlay there. But before we get into your general highlights of your career, or at least a delineation of some, can you let the Cheap Heat viewers know about your training process, being a fellow Canadian? And I know you worked under the legend Sweet Daddy Siki and had some memorable matches with Edge and Christian when just starting out their career.
Yeah, well, it was Sully's gym on Fraser Street, Toronto, and I was in training about a year before Adam got there, and then Jay was another year before Jay started. So Adam, Jay are Edge and Christian, for those everybody I'm pretty sure knows, but just in case. So Ron Hutchison and Sweet Daddy Siki. Ron got a nice big play out in Toronto when Edge was doing his retirement show or whatever it was in Toronto recently. So Ron got to stand up and take a bow, as deserved as it is. He deserves it. Great trainer. And between the two of them, the training was Ron. Ron beat the hell out of us with cardio. He made us do all kinds of a specific one called PTA, which I use when I'm teaching seminars. Everywhere in the world, I try to drag PTA with me. PTA is what got me the TV show I did in England, the celebrity wrestling show, because I had to beat up celebrities, so I had to do it with cardio. So PTA was wonderful. It kills you, but it makes you a better athlete. So Ron was the trainer there, and he would get in and do the techniques and stuff like that. He liked a certain amount of legitimacy in all the moves. He doesn't like anything that looks too phony or too garbage. He likes it, reality based. And then Siki, God bless him, he would sit there and look like he was falling asleep. We'd do a match, and it would be a terrible match because we're just new. We just want to show off all the holes we saw on TV last week. So we're just doing a 45-minute match, tagging in and out at will, no real psychology or anything. And we just think we're awesome. We're doing great. And then Ron at the end of it just kind of shakes his head and goes, "Gee whiz, guys, what the hell was that?" And then he'd go over to Siki, "Reg, what do you say?" And Siki would be looking at it, and all of a sudden he'd just look up and he'd go, "Joe, your feet were wrong with the headlock." And I'd be like, "What? Oh, shoot, they weren't they?" Like, you'd swear he was asleep, but he was so in the moment he could find anything. And Siki had all the connections. I mean, Ron had connections in the Maritimes because he'd done quite well out there as the Masked Thunderbolt, the intelligent, sensational Masked Thunderbolt. But obviously Siki been all over the world, and Siki was good friends with Tiger Jeet Singh. So I'd done a couple of indie shows. I'd done 3. It was really hard to get on indie shows in Ontario at the time. It was heavily regulated. So anytime they ran a show, it just was too much money for them to risk on green guys. They'd bring in the old timers that they knew, had a clue what they were doing. So, I was lucky enough to get on about 3 shows. And then Siki asked me if I wouldn't mind during the week getting in the ring with Tiger Jeet Singh Jr. and working out with him. I was like, yeah, I was working in bars at night, so I had my days free. I was like, yeah, the more ring time, the better. So I trained with Tiger Jr. for a couple weeks. Then Siki brought Tiger in. They said, "All right, show us what you can do." And a spin kick and a few other things. For a big guy, it was impressive. And then Tiger goes, "Okay, thank you very much," and shakes my hand. I'm like, "Thank you very much for today," or "Thank you very much for, we're done." He's like, "We're done. In 2 weeks, we're taking Tiger Jr. to Japan." And I was like, "Listen, not for nothing. I don't want to. I got to be honest with you. I taught him, and I'm not ready for Japan. Are you sure he's ready?" And Tiger's like, "Look, he's got the Tiger Jeet Singh name. He can do all the big bumps that I'm not going to do at my age. and he can swing a chair. It's FMW. He's going to be fine. I'm like, you say so. You're the expert, So I was kind of disappointed that it was over. But he never promised me anything. He just shook my hand and said thank you, and I was happy for the ring time. I thought that was kind of what he was gifting me. And about a month later, they got back from the tag tournament in Japan. Apparently, it got over well. Siki pulled me in the office and said, and I thought I was in trouble. He's like, get in here, sit down. I'm like, what do I do? To totally called me out on the carpet. He says, do you have a passport? I'm like, no. Like, are you trying to deport me? What the hell? Am I doing that badly? He's like, no, get one. You're going to Japan. I was like, eh? He says, yeah, Tiger wants to say thank you for helping get Tiger Jr. ready. I was like, well, he didn't promise me that. He goes, no, he didn't promise anything, but he appreciates it, and that's the kind of guy Tiger is. So Tiger kicked open the doors for me to go to Japan, which opened up Winnipeg for me, which ultimately opened up South Africa for me. So all those things are off the back of Siki having the connection. Mm-hmm. So he was tremendously helpful just in that regard. And then when I got back from Japan the first time, Adam had just been doing a few weeks. And then he just kind of picked up stuff quick. So he, myself, and my buddy Keith would hang out all the time. And then Christian Jay started showing up. And he's just hilarious. So we liked having him around. And then he, I think he took his student loan and paid for wrestling school with a student loan, which he shouldn't have done. But he paid everything off. It's all legal at the end of the day. And yeah, Ron kept putting me and Adam together just because we're both about the same height. We're pretty close. So physically, we looked about right. Keith could work with Rob because they were about the same height and they could, work their style. And then Adam and I would do like the heavyweight match. And then eventually Jay came on board and I started getting us booked in Detroit. And then they came up with they wanted a pro-Canadian tag team, like a group, like a horseman type thing. So we came up with Thug Life, which was me, Edge, Christian, Rhino, and our manager, handsome Johnny Bradford, wrestling's only deaf manager, and a wonderful human being. And we came up with that about 3 weeks before Brett did his pro-Canadian thing and made ours look weak because he just had the whole machine behind him. But I can proudly say we were a couple of weeks ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and that's that was definitely a memorable angle and a one heck of a good idea. With respect to Edge and his retirement, do you really think he's retired? Just speculating, of course, or if you know differently, do you think that he will eventually end up? I know a lot of folks online are talking about AEW courting him. What are your thoughts on that sort of chatter?
I guess anything's possible. And I mean, Jay's there. They've been, obviously best friends forever and ever and ever. So, I mean, maybe they could talk him into coming over, but he's been so loyal to WWE for so long. And WWE's been so loyal to him. Like I've had my issues with him, but he's had a smooth ride with them. They love him. And I think my estimation is he'd probably go with the Legends contract. And they'll pull him out every now and again. They'll pull him out of mothballs. He'll make a surprise appearance at a Rumble. He'll show up periodically on Raw or SmackDown. Maybe captain a team if they have some angle. Show up in NXT. I could see him maybe taking a periodic trainer's role down in NXT. Stuff like that. But I think he's going to be under the WWE umbrella for good. I don't think he'll jump because when Christian jumped the first time to TNA, apparently he was tempted to go because he felt they didn't have much plans for him. He was kind of floating there. He did a match with Booker T where something to do with shampoo commercial or something. Yeah. It's some really flimsy angle that is kind of beneath him. So he was kind of considering jumping to TNA, who would have offered him good money at the time. Dixie had her dad's wallet at the moment, and he did. He dug his heels in and stuck with WWE, and obviously that was the right move. So I can't see why he wouldn't pursue that. He wouldn't consider that continually because it's worked so well for him in the past, and they're good to him.
Yeah, and hats off to the work that Christian's been doing the last 2 years too. Are you surprised that he is still, as given the hardcore style or high spot ladder matches, TLC, et cetera, that he really cut his teeth in the WWF? Are you surprised that he is still able to do what he does at a high level, notwithstanding his promo ability, which has always been top drawer? I think we may have frozen here, folks. Stand by.
There we are.
There, we're back. Did you catch my long-winded question?
You started talking about, was I surprised about Christian due to the hardcore stuff? I didn't hear the last of it.
Well, just that he's able to still do what he does in the ring so effectively, given that, he cut his teeth on the tables, ladders, chairs matches, and notwithstanding his promo ability, which has always been top notch.
Well, the thing that Jay and Adam both have, can I swear on this thing? Like, I don't want to.
Pete, bro. It's whatever you need.
Okay, it's fine. I just didn't want to offend your advertising. But
no worries.
One of the great things about if you have somebody who has a great spot in the business, it's usually because on a big event, they know how to have a holy shit moment, right? Like Adam knows how to have a holy shit moment, right? And he's very strategic about it because, he did the thing with Jeff Hardy was hanging off the rings and he speared him off the ladder, and everybody, oh my god, that stole the show, right? That's every WWE video from that point had that spot on, to advertise it. And then he did the spear on Foley through the flaming table, through the ropes. He knows how to have a holy shit moment. But then when he dropped the belt to the Undertaker, there was no holy shit moment because he didn't want that to be as memorable. He's very clever, to be fair. Jay knows how to have those holy shit moments. Like if you're watching his TLC match, you watch TLC matches now, and it's just one car crash after another. Just danger, danger, danger. Jay knows how to tease it, and then one big bump that goes, oh my god! Like he falls off the table, over the top rope, off the ladder, over the top rope, through a bunch of tables. So he's been able in that environment to protect his body as much as he could. Now he's with a company that really only works once a week. If he was doing that kind of stuff 7 days a week, if he was doing, Ring of Honor or something like that, where it has a full schedule, even if it's just Thursday to Sunday, 4 days a week, that might be tough on him at his age. Because I'm older than him, and I feel it after a match. I did a Royal Rumble, I think it was last week in Berlin, and I was feeling at the end of it. I didn't take one bump, but I was like, gee whiz. Everybody does a job for the calendar, right? And, so I can say it's incredible to watch how he does it, but he does it so smart that he protects himself. Like now he's teaming up with that Luchasaurus guy or something. I bet you if you were stand back and watch the matches, I bet you Luchasaurus is doing more of the bumping than him. He'll take the bump at the key time that gets the most pop and the most value. But he's not just bumping for the sake of bumping. He's bumping and he's making everything matter. And that's why he has longevity.
Now, skipping ahead a bit, you had quite an extensive worldwide career prior to coming to the WWF at the time. Can you tell the Cheap Heat fans how this came about and what the initial vision was pitched for you creatively or given to you?
Like how I got to WWF, is what you're saying?
Yeah, and what your expectations were in terms of your role going in.
Okay. Well, I hadn't, it was mostly car rides. It wasn't a huge international deal for the most part. I'd done Japan a couple times, and I'd done South Africa, and eventually did Germany. But those were the only really, and then obviously Canada and the States. So it wasn't, now I'm up to 46 countries. So, 4 or 5 countries, not that everybody can do 4 or 5 countries now.
To some, maybe.
Well, but either way, but it was a lot of work. I was always going down to Detroit, every couple of weeks down to Detroit. And we go to Winnipeg and we spend a month out there and do the Indian reservations, the hell tours as they call them. And, just working in front of crowds every night, that's what helps you. That's what helps you develop, so those were all super helpful. Adam and Jay Adam got signed because Carl DeMarco liked him. We'd done a show in, I think, Oshawa, just outside Toronto, for those of you not familiar with Southern Ontario, just east of Toronto. We'd done a tag match there, and Carl DeMarco really liked him. So Carl got in touch with all of us, but he was really kind of pursuing Adam. So he got Adam a tryout. Adam got a job. Then I guess while Adam was waiting for his visa, they said, come on into Hamilton and do a gig at Cops Coliseum. Adam's car died. So he said, can my buddy Jay, if Jay drives me there, can you let him in? That's how he doesn't realize, yeah, we'll comp him. Who cares? But at the time he's like, please. So Jay came and Jay brought his gear. And sure enough, they said, well, actually, how about you work with your buddy here? So Jay got a look-see right there. So that kind of kicked open the door for Jay. So that helped Jay a lot. Then they were both in, and I was touring. I finished Germany, then I went out to the East Coast. I went out for Emile Dupree. Towards, I'd done one tryout camp, and they said they liked me, but they didn't know what to do with me. I'm like, okay, well, stay in touch. And so I was out in the East Coast, and then Jay called me one night, and I was staying at Frank Parker's house. God rest his soul. Frank Parker died. He was a referee, a great guy. So he called me at Frank's house and said, listen, Terry Taylor's going to call you in a few minutes. I'm like, because why? He said, well, I think they got a job for you. I said, well, okay. He said, like, they want the new Freebirds. They want to have a new Freebirds, and they want you to be the Terry Gordy of the team. And I was like, that's awesome. I'm a fan. I like Terry Gordy. I think he was great. I met him once in Japan. Great guy. And just a hell of a talent. So if they're looking at me like a Terry Gordy, I'm like, oh, this is good. They're looking at me as valuable. And I said, but me as a Freebird, like, I'm not from the South. I kind of wrestle more than I brawl, and I don't drink. I'm like the opposite of a Freebird. And he's like, well, yeah, but you can pretend, and it's money. I'm like, good point. So Terry Taylor called me, I don't know, an hour later, and gave me the heads and tails of it and said, we want to fly you in. When can we bring you in? And he said, can we bring you in September 6th? And I was like, that's perfect. I finish here on September 5th. So it was like serendipitous. So they flew me down. I did my tryout. Michael Hayes had to watch my match to greenlight it because Michael Hayes wanted to be the manager. So it was going to be me, Reckless Youth, and then they floated a ton of ideas for the third guy. Scott Vick was in the conversation a lot. So Michael Hayes really liked me. Terry Taylor liked me. They hired me and Reckless Youth right away. And I went home. I was like, great, I'm going to be one of the Freebirds. They said, okay, just, send us all your information. We got to get your visa together. So I had to send them Japanese magazines and all kinds of stuff to validate why they would use somebody out of the country as opposed to somebody in the country. Look, this guy's been everywhere. So I sent them all my stuff, and I just sat and waited. It took, I think it took about 9 months for them to get a visa for me. Now, Trish Stratus, they hired her. They had her on TV in 3 weeks. So the value of being hot is not lost on me. I'm not hot, and that's why it took 7 months. She's hot. She was on TV immediately. But, they flew me in once to meet Vince. So I got the last flight out of Toronto before Blizzard closed the airport down and spent all day sitting at Titan Towers. They put us in their gym. They have like a whole Gold's gym in there. It was amazing. And so they fed us, and we worked out and everything. And, obviously there's me and two other guys. Can't even remember their names at the time. But, we're all kind of, well, we're going to meet, the fucking guy. We're going to meet Vince. So we're all kind of, and so they said, you're going to meet him one at a time. So you guys wait in this office. They'll bring you in one at a time. So I got, all right. So they brought the first guy in, and I'm sitting there, and they kept getting the other two guys before me. I think I was the last one. So I'm like, I'm hoping it's best for last and not, all right, what do we got left out there type thing. So they cart me into office, and it's a huge, lovely, exactly what you'd expect Vince to have. It looks like Lex Luthor's lair, it was a big deal. And Linda comes up, introduces herself, and offers to pour me coffee and stuff. I'm like, you're the boss's wife. Don't you have people to do that for you? But she's just a sweetheart. And Bruce Pritchard was there. And we sat down, and Vince was incredibly complimentary. Shakes my hand, tells me he likes me. He said, I don't know, there's something in that Canadian water. You guys are all, good technicians. And I guess he was watching videos of us before we walked in, so he'd be familiar with what we could, pull off. So I guess they'd shown him a dark match or something. Because he was quoting specific things that I'd done in matches. And I'm like, you didn't memorize that. Like, that happened a few seconds ago. That's why you're thinking of it. And he said, I see you as kind of the halfway point between Mick Foley and Ted DiBiase. And I was like, that's fantastic. Like, wow, that's like a huge compliment. I'm a big fan of both those guys. And he was looking through, like, Kevin Kelly had interviewed me a couple months prior and asked all the stuff I'd done. Like, we want to build a character off your real life. And so they talked about my martial arts and stuff. So they got a Steve Blackman. I don't think they're going to go for me doing a karate guy thing. But who knows? So I gave him that, and I told him that at one point, just to show that I can do character and stuff like that, that on the Indian reservations, Don Callis claimed he was sick. I just think he didn't want to do the drives. So I was like, they asked me if I'd work twice a night. Once as myself and once under a mask as Dr. X. And Dr. X, nobody believes Dr. X is going to win a match. So there's no heat on Dr. X. So I did Dr. X the first night. I thought it was terrible. So the next night, I told the GOAT, the ring announcer, her name was Jennifer. I told her, don't say I'm Dr. X. Say I'm from San Francisco General Hospital, Communicable Disease Ward, and I'm the male nurse. So I came out, and I just swanned about, and the quote I had was, I made Goldust look butch. I'd swan about, and they'd hip toss me, and then I'd hug the ref's leg, and I'd start humping the ref's leg, and I'd roll out of the ring and sit on the guy's lap and play with his hair. I was complete ridiculous. Like, there's no other way to describe it. I was ridiculous. And I'd mentioned that just in passing to Kevin, but he wrote it down. So Vince is flipping through. He goes, I see your black belts, karate and kung fu. It's impressive, and you played football. That's good. I'm like, all right, this is a good direction. He goes, I have concerns about the male nurse. And I'm like, oh, for the love of God, no. And he goes, it says here it makes Goldust look butch. I'm like, oh, dear Lord. Oh, no. And he pulls his glass off the stairs. And he goes, I never, ever want to see that. I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, I was afraid you'd want me to play a transsexual Nazi Eskimo or something, right? So he started asking me what I wanted to do, like any ideas I had. And I said, well, cults scare me. I find cults really freaky. Because, like, you tell somebody, yeah, go kill that guy. I'll give you $20, cash money, go kill that guy. But under the right circumstances, with the right leverage, I could say, well, I don't want you to do it, but if you don't do it, God's going to be mad at you. And then this guy will pay me $20 for the privilege. Like, it's very manipulative, and I find that spooky. I think a cult leader would be interesting. And he's like, we're non-religious, non-partisan. I'm like, The Undertaker and Brother Love and Reverend Devon. But I don't say anything because I want the job. And I said, well, another idea is that I'd love to cut. I had really long hair at the time. I said, I'll cut my hair short, wear a suit and tie, and because this is right at the tail end of the grunge era. So everybody's got like piercings and ratty hair and, checkerboard t-shirts and stuff. And I was like, I want to tell America to straighten up and, they got to straighten up and get a real job. Quit, using all them marijuana pills and such. And, I want to have a group called the Memorial Majority, because at that point, WWE was, kind of going into the, the girls were getting their cans out on TV and there's all sexual innuendos and stuff. I said, this would be the perfect bad guy, is somebody telling them not to do it. You're getting so much problems from the real moral majority that if I push it, you can kick my ass on TV or, get heat on that. He's like, I just don't, I don't feel there's a lot of, direction or money in that. I'm like, well, you're the expert. Little did I know the right to censor would come along later. But either way, so I kept going back to the cult leader thing because I thought that was money. Mm-hmm. And I said, look, I'm not trying to say it's a religious thing. I'm not saying I'm God. I'm just saying I'm a messenger. That's the point. And he went, all of a sudden he turned into like calling Mr. McMahon. Like, the messenger. He stares off. Don't blame me. I'm just a messenger. And I just kind of stood there and watched him go off into McMahon land. And then he's like, Bruce, get them legal, see if the messenger is, if we can get that as a copyright and blah, blah, blah. And he kept pushing on that. And he was really into that idea. I was like, okay. And as we discussed it wound up becoming like, I'd be backstage. You'd see Crash Holly backstage. And he'd be, sitting there sweating and rubbing his head. Somebody come, what's the matter? He goes, I got to wrestle Taz tonight. Taz is going to, reach down my throat and pull my heart out. This is going to be terrible. And then I'd be off in the corner. It's like, well, Taz is beatable if you have the right information. And then he pays me off and I show him like a medical report that Taz had torn his bicep. You go after that arm. Then sure enough, he goes on and sneaks a win over Taz. Next thing you know, I'm doing that backstage for everybody. Mm. And then somehow that way Vince talked about it, ultimately weasel in on the acolytes, where you hire acolytes to kick ass, but you hire me to give the acolytes the information to kick ass. And that was the way it was supposed to go. And then when they started me on TV, I was just like, it was the most senseless gimmick ever, because I would show up backstage in every city. But apparently I didn't work for the company. And I didn't want to wrestle. But I had spandex ready to go to wrestle. So it was, and they didn't know if I was a face or heel, if I was lying or telling the truth, nothing. They had no idea. They used me to get the Hunter and Steph angle off the ground. Hunter, Steph, Kurt Angle deal. I'd be, hey, Hunter, Kurt's trying to nail your wife. And then, hey, Kurt, Hunter's slapping Steph near him. And I get them fighting. And then eventually, once they get that going, they've got to pull me off. You got to pull me away from it. Otherwise, the heat switches to me. And it was supposed to start their heat. But once they pulled me off, they didn't know what to do. And then I was, just jobbed out, basically. And then once they bought WCW, they fired a ton of people, especially people that are spending extra money, because they have to spend extra taxes. They have to buy visas and stuff for me. So guys like me and Jason Sensation, they're going to let us go first because they don't have any immediate plans. And they've got all these WCW and ECW guys to pull up on TV for the next year. So I understand why at that point I had to go. They didn't have any plans for me, but if I'd been figured in earlier, I wouldn't have had to go. But they didn't know how to figure me in because they gave me the worst gimmick in history.
But did Mr. McMahon, originally agree to the cult leader's messenger style deal, and then it just kind of morphed into this other thing?
Well, it started off as the cult leader thing, and then he kind of slipped away from the cult leader thing. It's just me having more information than everybody else. So it wasn't a cult leader so much as it was me, being the sneaky guy who had all the dirty information on everybody else. And that was how I was going to kind of make my appearance. I'd always have some sneaky little thing just before a match, just before somebody's about to wrestle a match. They get a phone call that their wife was in a car wreck. So then they just run away and this guy wins by count out, that type of thing. And I would always have this sneaky information. I'd always have these weird situations that I could manipulate, but they didn't have any, I've got to manipulate it for a reason. There's got to be an end game. I can't just go around and manipulate, because why? Why would they allow me in the building? I have to have a purpose there, and they didn't have any purpose. So, like I said, I think he thought it was a good way to get the Hunter Steph thing going, and then after that, I was a non-issue.
Did you ever have an opportunity to follow up that first meeting when things weren't working out the way you thought with Mr. McMahon?
Never got to talk to Vince. He was always surrounded by people, and I like to talk to you one-on-one and not act like I'm showboating. So I could never pull him, but I did pull Shane. And I did pull Shane was probably the highest up guy. But I also pulled JR, I pulled Bruce Pritchard, I pulled Gershwitz, all those different guys. Try to say, look, you're booking me out of a job. Everything you're doing with me right now is not money. And it's not wise to keep somebody around here who isn't worth money. So you're paying me a lot of money, and I'm not making it back for you. So don't you think it'd be a wise idea to put me in a money position so that I can make back all the money you're investing in me? You're flying me from Canada every week. Those are expensive flights. Those are $1,400 a week. That's a lot of money at the end of the year that could go, that I should be making back for you. And you're not putting me in position to do so. And Shane patted me on the back and told me, no, we love your work. We think your work's great. We really like your work. We like your attitude. Everything's good. We just got to find the right angle to put you in, the right character. I'm like, can we get to it? Can I talk to a writer who's got a clue? Because this guy, Jamie, that had working with me, was terrible. Let me work with Gershwitz. He seems to have a clue. He can find his apps with both hands. But, Gershwitz was so busy with Rock and Edge and Christian and all the top spots that they're not going to put him on a guy that's, opening up metal on Sundays.
It's too bad that cult leader thing was quite interesting. I noticed you worked with a man that we've had in Great North Wrestling a couple of times, Gangrel, and he always what a great person in the ring, and that character with the blood and everything. That was one of the most memorable mid-card acts of the period there. Do you have any particular recollections working with Gangrel?
I worked against them and I tagged with them in WWE because, like, once again, they didn't have a clue what they were doing. So one week I'm his partner, next week I'm his enemy. The cool things I like coming up through the Ring of Fire is my favorite ring entrance ever. That's the coolest thing. That's the way, like, I picture Ozzy coming up on stage. I'm a big Ozzy Osbourne fan. Mm-hmm. So when we got to come up through the Ring of Fire, like, the whole time you couldn't punch the smile off my face. Like, yeah, this is awesome. So I like that. And it's the thing that you don't realize about Dave if you haven't met him is that he's so polite. He is such a sweet, nice, polite guy. You couldn't ask for a better human being. He's a wonderful guy. But there's the thing, he does that double armbar suplex, right? Which nobody else does, and they should because it's a really cool move. So I did the thing where I was setting him up like I was going to do a double underhook powerbomb. And then he stomps my feet, switches it into the double arm bars, and gives me the throw. So everything sets up. He sends me off the ropes, goes to the backdrop. I blast him. I double underhook. I give the crowd the dirty look. He stomps my foot, switches up into the arm bar, and then leans into my ear and goes, "Jump, please." And I'm jumping the air. I'm trying not to laugh, but I'm giggling through the air. Like, he's the sweetest, nicest vampire you ever met. Jump, please.
That's amazing.
I've toured all over England with them too. Just the best.
Were there plans at one point to tag you guys up or in a faction like the Brood? Or
I would have gone for it. I absolutely would have gone for it, but I don't think they had any plans for Dave. Dave, at the time, I think was having home issues. He and Luna were at odds. So I know that a lot of them, like, they'd see Dave would just be sitting there hanging his head, like, just depressed. And so let's say I'd see office guys walk, just kind of like, or Dave and just walk away because they didn't want to hear anybody's, home issues. So I don't think they had plans for him because they just didn't know what his mindset was, because he didn't seem in the ring. He was focused. He never blew a spot with me. He was always great. But when they saw him backstage, I think they were like, "Oh, I don't know, he might be a time bomb," and he wasn't. He's a total pro and just a great guy. So I would have gladly have done the weirdo vampire tag team with him. That'd have been fun.
Mm-hmm. Interesting how these things work when it's quite obvious to.
But also hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, true. Did you have any interactions, notable or otherwise, with Stone Cold and The Rock?
Yeah, there was the one pay-per-view. It was Unforgiven. I want to say 2001. Must have been 2001. They started off the show where Rock's in the locker room backstage. And then Austin walks in because they were trying to find out who ran Austin over. That was the angle. Who hit him with the car. So I guess Rock was coming in to, tell Rock he's a jerk and he thinks Rock did it or something. And then I wander in. And then Austin beats me up. That was the basic nuts and bolts of it. But the best part was that when we're setting everything up ahead of time, I shake hands with everybody. You're always polite. And they go, "Okay, Joe, you and Austin wait outside. We'll cue you in." So we're standing out in the hall. And it's the first time I'd met Steve before in passing. This is the first time we actually got to shoot the breeze. And so he's like, "So where are you from?" I said, "Well, from Toronto." "Oh, with Edge and them guys, right?" So yeah. "Yeah, where you been working?" I said, "Oh, Japan and Africa and stuff like that." "Oh, Japan, are you a shooter?" I said, "Well, I can." And like, I'm not challenging you to a fight or something, but yeah. He goes, "Okay, well, if I stiff you, don't whoop my ass in there. I got a reputation to uphold." And then they called him in the room, and I was looking around going, why was there no witness to see Steve Austin asking me not to kick his ass?
You could have made money out of that for a long time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But he was a good guy. He seemed very much like his character, just with more swearing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
In terms of your working with Lethal Weapon, Steve Blackman, do you have any matches that stand out there? I ask this because fans on social media seem to be always asking about Blackman. He made a real impression there in his run, and he seems to have gone off. God bless him, but seems to have gone off the radar, so to speak. Do you have any highlights that you could share with the fans?
I think he's running a martial arts school in Pennsylvania now, or wrestling a martial arts school, if I'm not mistaken. I read about that in the last year or so. I hope he is. He's a really nice guy. He's twitchy. Like if you talk to him backstage, he goes, "How you doing?" And then he's always like loosening up his hips, like he wants to kick you in the face. And he's got this. I don't know. Like I've never seen him beat anybody up, but he's got this reputation of being the hardest guy ever. So nobody messed with him. Like, well, the famous Bradshaw story, like that was that one. But normally nobody messes with him. And he's also he's just such a naturally good athlete. I think we were in Atlanta, and in the building there's a weight room. She's like, "Come on, Joey, go lift." I'm like, "All right." So we went to lift, and I was doing all these different exercises, and all he did was 10 sets of bench press. That's all he did, and he had the best chest, practically in the job. He's in incredible shape, and he'd come up with the craziest things that would just set you on edge. He'd walk up to me, I don't know, he goes, "Hey Joey, it'd be a funny way to kill a guy." I'm like, "What?" What you do is you hang him, put him in a noose, right? You stand him on a block of ice, and then you and your friends sit and play cards and drink beer, and then whenever you got to piss, you go piss on the ice, and it just wears down until he hangs. Okay, I gotta go, and they leave. It's just you freak me out with shit like that.
Was that a Brian Pillman loose cannon thing, or was that him?
I think it was him. He was an odd duck, but he was great. Like he made me laugh. And I had a hardcore title match with him, which I was happy with. And he was very excited. He wanted to give me the sidewalk slam, the old Dino Bravo thing. He wanted to do that, but face down with me. He wanted to pick me up and drop me on a chair or on a broken trash can or something. And we did that. He was so excited. He was demanding that spot. I was like, "Okay, let's do it." And it went fine. It got a good pop. But of all the things we did in that match, it was kind of the least impressive thing we did. But it got one of the best reactions, and I never would have expected it. So I think he had a certain connection with the audience, that he could do things that didn't on the surface seem impressive, but he knew would impress them.
Mm-hmm. How did you protect yourself on that one? I think I remember that spot and thinking it was odd and haven't seen it since.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. I don't know, just didn't hurt me. Picked me up. I mean, he's a strong as hell guy. I'm not the biggest guy. Well, I'm only... Like right now, I'm only about 260, and I was probably 260, 275 there. And he, like nothing, picked me up and did the bump. It's only from waist height down, so it's not like Jimmy Snuka off the top or anything. Mm-hmm. But everything was safe. The only thing that was tight, he crotches you on the top rope, and then he takes the garbage can and he spins around and cracks you in the back, the garbage can lid. And that's a big smack. It makes a big noise. But it's like getting slapped. It hurts. A big stingy slap on your back. But if that's the worst I get, like everybody else is telling you all these crazy stories about him that you're just afraid he's going to flash back to Nam and start cutting your throat. And he didn't. He was told pro the whole time.
Wow, that's amazing. But before we leave your WWF tenure, you touched on kicking off that angle with Triple H and Stephanie and Kurt.
Yeah.
Do you have any notable discussions or meetings or whatnot with Triple H? And did you see back then that he would ascend to the level that he has today?
Well, he was the champ for the good portion of the time I was there, so I knew he was a top guy. I didn't know he was going to be a top office guy, but I didn't have a ton of interaction with him. I know he's one of the guys I talked to. I was in catering late. I had to do a vignette early. So by the time I got to catering was a ghost town. It was practically by myself. So I'm, just in the mood. This gimmick sucks. I'm going to be out of a job. I worked hard to get here. And he walks in behind me, and he's like, "Hey, Joey." I'm like, "Hey, Paul." And he stops and gives me Hunter. I'm like, there's no cameras here, but all right. Is there something wrong? I said, "Yeah, actually, if you want to know, I think this is terrible. They're booking me out of a job. They give me a gimmick that doesn't work, and they're not letting me get any heat, because the minute I get heat, they kill the heat off. And I'm going to be out of a job in 6 months after working so hard to get here, because I'm being booked out of it, not because I'm being a bad guy or I'm showing up drunk or something like that. I'm showing up prepared." And he's like, "Well, you got to have a gimmick that's, kind of like your real life." I'm like, "Yeah, but this Just Joe character doesn't, like, he's scared to fight everybody. I have 4 black belts. I'll fight anybody. Like, I'm not saying I'll win every fight, but I can handle myself." Mm. And he says, "Do you have you know martial arts? I go, yeah. He goes, so you can kick some ass? I'm like, well, yeah, but I mean, this isn't UFC, you know, like I'm not expecting to have to go there and really kick ass. He goes, think you can kick my ass? Like, I said, no, you got a hammer, right? So I just patted him on the shoulder. I said, Paul, you'd be dead before you hit the ground. And I walked away laughing, figuring he'd get a ha-ha out of it. He never talked to me again. So that might be another reason I cut my own throat in the business by saying that to the guy who wound up being on top.
It's almost worth it to have that story, though, isn't it?
Tell that to my banker.
True. You then went on to be a part of TNA during what many fans regard as a pretty golden era, and definitely an underrated era. That being the Asylum years and the Fairgrounds. What was that atmosphere? As it had a very old school feel to it, and old school fans. Was that your experience working there?
The great part about it was the team. Everybody felt we had something to prove, right? Like WWE had a monopoly, put WCW out of business, ECW out of business. They were the North American product and kind of the world's product because everybody knows the WWF guys. Not everybody knows the New Japan guys, but everybody knows the WWF guys. WWE now. So everybody backstage, we wanted to put on the best show because, we had a certain amount of pride, like, check us out. We know what we're doing. Like, so I love that kind of, us against the world type mentality. And from what I heard, I've talked a lot to Raven and Sandman and stuff about it. And they were like, yeah, that was the ECW locker room. There's a certain camaraderie that let's just do whatever it takes and screw those guys. We're doing it for the love of the business and not for the money. And definitely for TNA, it wasn't for the money, but we were trying hard, right? So I love that atmosphere. But at the same time, I kept watching The Office undermine the product. Like, they had Insane Clown Posse there. Now, in fairness, I've known those guys for years. When they were still Hector Hatchet and the Sewer Dweller. We knew them from Detroit. That's, way before they became, ICP, the wrestling thing. I think they were doing the music, but not the wrestling. So they came in, and all of a sudden, we had the wildest crowds. And you go out in the parking lot outside the Asylum, and there's just one Juggalo sticker after another on every car. So these people are driving down from Michigan to Tennessee on a Wednesday to come see this pay-per-view. They're not even like, I'm not saying that they're all, making big money bankers or anything, but these are people, taking time out and money out that they might not be able to afford to come and be a part of this. And so they were cheering like crazy for the Posse and anybody they thought the Posse liked. And they tried, I think, to make the Posse villains for a short time. And the crowd was just booing the babyfaces and cheering the villains. So they were doing it across the board because that's, they see that if the Posse are the bad guys, that means we like them as good guys. So everybody who's a bad guy, we're going to cheer. And instead of just going, you know what? The audience wants these guys as good guys. Let's do good guys. We've got a great wild atmosphere. This is going to translate well to the pay-per-views. This is what we want. And those juggalos are loyal. Like the ones who didn't make it, they're buying the pay-per-view. They're funding this thing. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Bob Ryder went with a couple of people out into the audience and basically scolded the audience and said, look, we're trying to do something here. And, you can't be booing Jeff and you can't be booing this guy and that guy. If you can't conduct yourselves the way we need you to conduct yourself for the pay-per-view, you can go home. And they did. And all of a sudden, people were sitting on their hands. As good as the talent was, as good as the matches were, the Office going out there and instead of just saying, all right, we were wrong to make them heels, let's make them baby faces. Like you don't have to put them in a featured championship match or anything. You can put them in a gimmick and just, like Too Cool. Like Too Cool wasn't really figured in as the top team, but they were welcome on the show and the crowd always popped. Do that with ICP. Let them have, keep the crowd happy. They'll keep paying for tickets, but they decided that the crowd was wrong, not the Office. So I felt that was them shooting themselves in the foot, and it was going to be a long time before they could get around that.
Wow, that's something I hadn't heard before. That's interesting. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Would one of your highlights be two-part question. Your relationship with Jeff Jarrett in that company, and would one of your highlights be beating him?
It should have been, because the idea that I was brought in as part of Vince Russo's Sports Entertainment Extreme faction, Sex in TNA, right on the nose, right? So I think my first thing was a run-in, and I beat the hell out of Jeff all over the building. And I put a chair on him, and I kicked him, and he got color. And so I got good heat. So they put me in with Jeff the following week, and we were having a weapons on the pole match. Like the first guy who get a hold of the guitar could twat the other guy's like. So that was leading to that. So the week prior, I had to beat him in a straight match. So I said, like, how much time do we got? And he said, oh, you got about, I don't know, 15 minutes. And I was like, okay. So Jeff is never sitting still. I'm like, well, Jeff, could we discuss what we're going to do? We're semi-main event. I think it was AJ and D'Lo in the main event, maybe. Either way, we weren't main event. We were semi-main. And so like Jeff, he's like, I like what you do. Just, I saw what you did in Australia. I saw what you did in the UK. You just put it together, and I'm with you. I'm like, all right, but I do want to run this by you because I don't want to, offer stuff up that you're going to do that you don't know if I can do. So I had a whole thing set up, and Scott D'Amore asked me, okay, where are you going to be? I said, well, we're going all over the building, and we're going to do this. Ooh, that looks dangerous. Like, don't worry, I'll be fine. And really set up this kind of event match because I got to showcase myself to be a threat, And they wanted me to showcase that Jeff was a fighter and not just, the guy who owns the company that everybody puts over. So I set the whole thing up, and Scott's like, okay, we need cameras here. And like, it was a big process because it wasn't just me working with Jeff. I had to work with the cameras. I had to make sure the place is cleared out for us to do stuff. Weapons placed appropriately that people wouldn't touch and not realize they were weapons till we used them. I had everything set up brilliantly. I was very happy with how everything was set up. And then it's time to go out for the match. About 5 minutes beforehand, Jeff comes and goes, listen, the show's running long. We can't have the show run over. If the show runs over, it's like 10 grand for every half hour or something for satellite time. So our match's got to go shorter. I'm like, all right, we got 15. What do we got, like 10? He goes, about 4. And we have 4 minutes? This is supposed to be the thing that gets me over as a big heel. He goes, yeah, so I'll just come, like you go out and then I'll come through and we'll just start in the comeback. I'm like, well, I've set up to get cameras all over the shop here. Like, this is going to kind of screw the whole thing up. He's like, well, it's a lot of money. I'm like, all right, if that's what you say. So we went out there, and Russo had to come out, and I think he blasted Jeff from behind. And that's where I got to steal the win. And then I come to the back after it, and D'Amore's hot. Now, D'Amore and I have got along for years. And, he's been hot at me before. And we deal with it. But he was fucking, he's like, what the hell was that? You spent all day, you got this fucking match together. And he's really mad. Because, he was a producer, and it kind of falls on him. Because all these cameramen are ready to go, and you cut it short like that. I'm like, it wasn't me. Look, Jeff told me we had to cut it short. He's paying the bills. I got to do what he asks. He says, what are you talking about cutting it short? I said, he said the show was going too long. And instead of 15 minutes, we had 4, between 3 and 4. He goes, the show's over. The whole show ran 15 minutes under. So basically, Jeff didn't want to sell and lose. So as much as that would be a key moment to kind of get me over, he undermined it. He went out there, kicked my ass, and Vince hit him, and I beat him. But really, Vince beat Russo. So that screwed me. Then the next week, I built it up so we have a bigger, longer match. And he jumped off the top and hit me with the guitar and won. And that was the end of kind of the run with it. So as much as it could have been something good for me, he undermined it because he didn't want to sell antlers.
Politics. Super.
Shame.
Yeah, it is a shame for sure. Super fan Grandma Daisy is asking if you have thoughts on the passing of Mike Lockwood, Crash Holly.
We got on well. We got on, especially like in WWE. Everybody kept telling me what a dick he was, right? And I could see it. He was a bit of a dick there. When he got to TNA, I don't know whether he just gotten, that's a little slice of humble pie, as they call it. But he was super, super friendly with me at that point. And then at one point, he was trying to come up with an idea for merchandise. And his name's like Mike, right? So I said, why
Matt
don't you
Mike.
even, use the Nike swoosh, but make it where it's a whole bunch of fingers so it looks like a fist, and be like Mike, you kind of piggyback off the Nike logo. And he was like, that's perfect. Okay, I'll do it. And you'll get your cut. Don't worry. I'm like, I don't want a cut. It's your merch. It's just an idea. Don't worry about it. Talk to the office. Get me a push. But that's about it, And so, yeah, when he saw that I didn't want anything from him, I was just happy to help him. I think, he started becoming way more friendly with me. I think he was a talented guy, and he did exceptionally well for a guy who was so little in stature at a time when they were really pushing monsters, which goes to show that, what kind of talent he had.
Mm-hmm. You, as part of Red Shirt Security, worked against a team that I have a lot of admiration for in terms of their talent, their accomplishments. That being America's Most Wanted, where you won the tag straps from them. Do you have any particular? No, you did not.
No, we won the tag belts. We won them from R-Truth and Road Dogg.
Okay, my mistake then. But working
we did a program with America's Most Wanted leading into that.
That must be what I've confabulated here. Do you have any particular highlight moments in any of your work with Storm and Harris?
They like to work hard, and they like to work long, which is two things I like to do. I always get will you just take it home already? Like we would like to get to bed tonight, but I like to put in the time and make sure the crowd gets their money's worth out of me. Those guys had a certain professional dignity that they wanted to make sure the crowd got their money's worth. Watching how the agents went to them, it was pretty evident that they had big plans for Chris Harris and that James Storm was the kid's sister. That's how they perceived him. So when, ages later, Chris Harris jumped WWE and then they did nothing with him. And then then Storm teamed with Bobby Roode and they did the beer money and got it run. It was nice to see that a guy who was kind of the Marty Jannetty position, where the office didn't want to use him the way they should have, ended up forcing his way into the top spot with a guy like Bobby Roode, so talented. So you could see it, and I could see how much Storm wanted to do, but I also saw how much Storm every match, like he's going to sell in hot tag to Harris. And Storm, sometimes he just hangs his chin like, what do I got to do here to let you see that I can do stuff too? So I made sure I pulled him aside and said that to him. I said, listen, I've got a couple of ideas for stuff to do so that you don't look like the kid sister, because I think it's terrible. I think the teams should look fairly equal. I don't think you should have one star and one kind of hanger on. And so I think he appreciated that when we did it. So that was my thing is the structure of the matches always had to be kick the crap out of Storm and let the hot tag come to Harris. And I wanted to make sure that Storm looked stronger than that.
A fan on social media wanted to know if you have any interesting Johnny Ace stories.
See, he came in after I left WWE. I know the stories secondhand. A lot of them filthy, so I don't know if I can tell them without getting sued.
No worries.
I know, like the Bushwhackers. I've been friends with them forever. When I was living in Puerto Rico working for IWA down there, I talked to Luke about him. And he was always like, yeah, he's definitely found a spot for himself. For a guy with 2 left feet, he certainly landed on them well. Everybody always said he wasn't a great worker. He wasn't great. He was in with Baba's wife, and that's why he had such a great run with All Japan. And everybody just knew that he was an excellent politician. I talked to him a couple times, and he was always very polite to me, but it was always cut very short. But I could understand that because, who am I? I wasn't working for the company, and I was a guy looking for a job. And how many times can you stand there and look at a guy and say, "All right, I'll try it. All right, I'll try it. All right, I'll try it." So I don't have any stories that I can say firsthand. So I don't want to bury the guy. He's done enough to bury himself. I don't need to bury him.
Yeah. I was just going to say the news over the last year certainly accomplished that.
Yeah.
Richie Hodgkins wants to know, did you prefer working for TNA Wrestling over, I guess he's referring to over the Fed?
Okay. For WWE, the money was better. The travel was better. The conditions were better. They paid for my flight. They paid for my hotel. They paid for my rental car. And if WWE owes you a nickel, then you get a nickel. If they owe you $1 million, you get $1 million. WWE never shorts you your money. They are professional beyond belief in that regard. I can nitpick about things I don't like about them, but I credit them where the door is due. TNA was a struggle politically backstage. So was WWE, for that matter. But I felt I had a better shot in TNA because they didn't give me the worst gimmick in history at first. I wasn't sure what they were doing. They brought me in as this guy who wanted to kill Jeff and used that as a springboard into being security for Jeff with the red shirt thing. So I felt they were particularly organized in that regard as far as piecing stuff together. But as far as the creativity they allowed me in my matches and putting me in a better spot at first. Like they put me in strong tag team matches, singles matches and stuff like that. And they brought me in on a run with Jeff. Didn't go as hoped or as it could have. But at least I got to showcase a little bit, which is more than WWF gave me the chance to do. So for an in-ring perspective, yeah, TNA I like better. From a professional standpoint, WWE.
Fair enough. Well, Joe, you've been tremendously generous with your time tonight, but I want to have the fans be fully aware of what you have upcoming, because I know you're still very active in ring and where your social media is. But the last time we spoke, you had a book that was going to be released, and perhaps you may start with that so that the fans could know where to grab that, because that'll be an engaging read, no doubt.
Okay, well, the book is called Marie's World. I'm the co-author. Crystal McCarrington is the actual author. It's called the wrestling romance genre, but she's written this romance book around wrestling. It's almost like a soap opera, right? And she sent me we talked ages ago, and she sent me the kind of treatment for what she was doing, and everything was good, but the wrestling wasn't really how wrestling works backstage. So I was there to kind of tidy up the wrestling parts of it, and she was kind enough to give me the co-author's credit. So the book's called Marie's World. The original copies were out, but now we've jumped to a different publisher, and it's supposed to be re-released August 21st, but I haven't heard because I've been busy with a million family issues and things like that. So I've been kind of snowed under. But if anybody wants to contact me about it, I think it's on Amazon. It's called Marie's World, and it's going to be part of a series of books. We're supposed to have a book a month coming out for the next foreseeable future. And it's all part of the Marie's World or universe, I guess you call it. But that'll be coming out, or that is it. The Marie's World's out, and then Layla's World's coming out, and there's Amber's, so many of them. It's hard to keep track of all the names. But it all starts, the starting block is Marie's World. I'm sure it's on Amazon. I hope it's on Amazon. But if I'm trying to find out now. But if you want to get a hold of me on the Joe E. Legend Facebook page or Instagram, or my real name, Joe Hitchin, Lord Joe E. Legend, I think, because I am a Lord, Scottish Lord. I have the paperwork.
Nice.
Get a hold of me there. I can direct traffic, hopefully, to where to get the books now. They're starting to get released.
And any upcoming wrestling appearances? Sir?
Yes. Here in Germany, I got this upcoming Saturday. I'm for GHW, German Hurricane Wrestling. I'm also I'm the head trainer at the EWP school in Hanover, European Wrestling Promotions. But I'm also one of the head trainers at the Power of Wrestling School, also in Hanover. So for the two different promotions, I'm a trainer in both, and I wrestle for the EWP. And we're looking to be getting back into running. We had some issues with the management. Now we're kind of smooth sailing. So it looks like we're going to get back into doing EWP events starting in November, it looks like. But I won't confirm that until it's 100% confirmed. I have a weekend I'm doing in Barcelona. It's the second weekend of October. I'm doing in Barcelona. which I believe is going to be simulcast. I'm waiting to get the links for all that so I can tell people where to find it. And I'm also in the weekends between that, I'll be teaching at the POW or the EWP schools. And then the fourth weekend of the month, I'll be doing 3 days in Scotland for W3L, the Worldwide Wrestling League. Then from there, I go right down into England to do 4 days for LDN wrestling. So those are my upcoming dates for there. I've got stuff in November and December as well, but those are the most immediate dates. So
the fans that want to keep up with you, your Facebook is the best place to do that.
Yeah. I'm so lazy on social media. You have no idea. But if you direct message me, I'll answer you. Excellent. I think you'll find my birthday was on September 2nd, and I got hundreds of happy birthday messages. I made it my business to try and thank each person individually. So I've taken plenty of time doing that. I should probably take as much time promoting myself. I might actually make a buck at this.
Well, notwithstanding that, you certainly have had one heck of an interesting career thus far. And I do thank you again for sitting down with me on the Cheap Heat Wrestling Podcast. Fans, that's it for this edition. We will catch you next time. Take care, everybody.